Okay, thank you for being here with me today. What we're going to cover is how nanotech pioneers the body and the different types of nanotech that's involved with that. And so, as per usual, we're going to do the presentation, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A. We're going to do the Q&A one at a time, so I'll keep everybody muted through that. You'll unmute yourself, you'll ask your question. And then this is just a note. This isn't aimed at anyone in particular, but when we're asking questions or even commenting, because that's allowed, of course, try not to traumatize other people. We all have these crazy stories about our targeting and the things we've experienced and survived and whatnot. And I could just sit here and traumatize all of you, and I'm sure most of you could traumatize all of us about all the crazy bad things that have happened. So when you get into your Q&As, try to keep it away from that. Not saying don't talk about your life, but when you talk about your life, again, try to do it in a way that's not traumatizing for other people. All right, so here we go. I'm going to share the screen. And then we're going to get right into it. This is how nanotech pioneers the body. Hold on a second. I got some interference coming through on the conference call. Sorry about this. Just give me 1 second. There's a high-pitched whine going on right now. I don't want it to ruin the broadcast. Let's see. Let's go here. Huh. And there's the interesting. That's new. Well, new problems for today. Sorry about the wait here. Trying to figure this out. That's not good. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and start anyways. Man, that's really irritating though. Hold on a second. 1 second. Okay, I'll get back into it. Get back into the presentation and we'll just roll with what happens. Ah, geez. Just getting everything back online. Okay, and we're back. Sorry about that, everybody. That was a new problem. Never had it before. Just going to be the case when we cover these subjects because this is a big deal. Everything we're talking about is a huge deal. And today it's how nanotech pioneers the body. Why this is relevant is because every person in Western society, and especially targeted individuals, survivors, has nanotech in their body. Quite a bit of it, actually. The nanotech is a polymer-based construction. We'll go over a lot of this in the presentation, but it grows from implant to implants, and electrical charges are transmitted from external directed energy weapons into your body through these polarized pathways of nanotech. All right, that'll make more sense as we go. There are two types of nanotech. There is smart particles. They are lab-engineered synthetic biology that genetically encodes for nanotech blueprints. Another way to say that is it's smart dust. It's I should have put 3 types actually, because there's another type that we all know about, the hydrogels and all that was in the medical interventions, shall we say, that was very popular a few years ago. But either way, this one, the smart particles, that's the majority of what people get into them. And synthetic biology, another way to say that is it's lab-created life forms. Like what they do is they take very simple strands of DNA and they splice them with genes, and then they create triggers in your body, in your environment, and in the particles themselves that basically turn it on, activate it. It's kind of like a seed. If you think of smart dust or smart particles like a seed, like a genetically modified seed with a whole bunch of random DNA put into it, that'll make the most sense. Some of the DNA that they've used for these synthetic biology smart particles is fruit flies, insects, other insects like ticks, mosquitoes. They've used certain types of bacteria like anthrax, E. coli. I guess anthrax isn't a bacteria, I don't think. It's a virus technically. But either way, they've used pretty much all the stuff that they've been working on in the lab for the last 50, 70, 80 years. They figured out how to encode different different diseases or toxins within them, or things that would cause diseases or toxins later. And they used all of those weapon systems to make what we would call today the chemtrail particulate. And it's not just that chemtrails have smart dust in them, they also have heavy metals and other things. Sometimes they literally have freeze-dried bacteria, stuff like that. But this is the big thing in chemtrails that we should all be hyper-focused on when it comes to chemtrails, is the smart dust that's like a seed that grows this nanotech in your body. Now, this other one, Nanowalkers, this is specific to targeted individuals. In 2004, there was two chemists in this New York University who figured out how to make these nanoscale-sized robots that basically use DNA to as their structure and to move around. So these nanowalkers are the conversation that's being had in science fiction about nanobots. That's really happened with these nanowalkers. And they don't have the capacity that the nanobots in popular science fiction talks about. It's nowhere close. It's not even the same thing. But they are pervasive like that, like this pictured in those science fiction stories. And they are very dangerous in ways because we'll get into it more, what they do. The qualities of nanotech, whether we're talking about the nanowalkers or the smart dust when it grows inside of you, is it's very sticky. It's very sticky in acidic conditions, and it forms a bioplaque. I mean, when you look at hydrogel or whatever, hydrogel is a good example of seeing this in this nanotech in one of its more prevalent forms. It's very chimeric. The nanotech from the smart dust, particularly, it has like 13 or 14 different life forms, different things it can. It's hard. Geez, these words are hard for me to say right now, but they can manifest themselves in very different ways to form complex arrays of nanomachinery. When the nanotech forms in your body, it makes you acidic, and it actually does better in acidic conditions. And in that way, the acidicism of your body makes you more magnetic and more of a backstop for directed energy weapon frequencies. Which is to say, because again, we're not using the Einsteinian model of physics when we're talking about this. We're using the etheric model because it's more accurate. It's a longer conversation, but when I say that these frequencies, you become a backstop for these directed energy with frequencies, what I mean is that the perturbations or the rippling effect of the ether, or we haven't gone over enough of this physics. So anyways, just put that aside. It makes you more magnetic the more nanotech you have in you, and the more the directed energy weapons work. The ambient directed So I guess the undirected energy weapons, and then the directed energy weapons too. Sorry for the mouthful there. The different mechanisms of the smart dust and the nanowalkers are basically very easy to think about. If you think about it in this term, the smart dust grows from the inside out. You consume it in the air you breathe, the food you eat. It goes in your GI and it gets in your lungs. And from your GI or your lungs, it gets to your bloodstream. And then from your bloodstream, it goes to wherever the target area is. In a person that's not being attacked with directed energy weapons, the areas that it go primarily is it stays within the vessels, the veins, and the arteries, causes clots. In a targeted person, the implants or the other directed energy weapons will send low pulses that will guide the nanotech to those areas. The nanowalkers, so that was the smart dust. The nanowalkers are the opposite. They go from the outside in because they're crawling on you. They're very, very small. They're nano-sized. They can also be put into aerosols and be drifted on you, but they're not in chemtrails as far as I know. They'll be specific to targeted individuals, survivors. They'll be released by their neighbors, or that's usually what it is, or during break-ins. And what happens is they get on your clothes, they get on your furniture, they get on your bedding, and they crawl from the outside in. It takes them about an hour, 2 hours to crawl an inch. So they're not very mobile, but there can be so many of them in one space that when one of them gets to this area, that really you're talking about potentially millions of them getting to this area. Together, and by the way, the nanowalkers, what they're doing when they get to an area is they're like, the way Robert McCreight explained it, and he was an insider that knew about this, is he said that these nanowalkers are like spot welding in a particular spot that's been tagged with radio frequency. He didn't say that part, but that's what it is. But another way to think about it is these nanowalkers, once they get to wherever they're supposed to go, they disassemble themselves in one form and become part of the nanotech, right? So they end up becoming nanotech once they stop going wherever they're going, and another frequency or another resonant frequency activates their, I wouldn't say liquidification, that's not the right way to think about it, but it's something like that. Because after that part, they're no longer mobile, and they're part of the nanomachinery. Okay, so I know this is a lot of big mouthful here. Smart dust grows from the inside out. Nanowalkers crawl from the outside in, and they hit you during break-ins primarily. That's when all of your stuff will get this crap on you. Together, they form the same nanotech or nanomachinery that goes now from the outside to the inside. When that happens, whether you have implants or not, you can be electrified easily. All right, this nanomachinery is conductive, and more or less it operates as an artificial nervous system. So it will not only it can be deposited where the implants are from the inside out, or crawl into you through one of your openings from the outside in. It also does better closest to your regular nervous system, stealing your energy, literally harvesting your natural electrical impulses for its own growth. So this is a little bit of what we just went over, nanotech growth. It's an intelligent design. It's set off by resonant frequencies. Like I was saying, that's how the nanowalkers go to wherever they're supposed to go, and also stop and turn into the nanotech wherever they're supposed to be. Low energy impulses from directed energy weapons, which I would say operate like temporary implants. Low energy impulses from implants, which are permanent and are pretty much always going off in a targeted person. That's why it's so important to deactivate implants, number one, in the paradigm that I've been presenting. All of these things, whether we're talking about the directed energy weapons or the nanotech or whatnot, all create an acidic internal environment. That acidic internal environment makes everything work way better. The metals stick in your body more, and the metals can also trigger the nanotech formation. I've heard of people, and I don't want to get too far off on this, but I've heard of people in like 2000, 2005, the first people that were, quote, getting Morgellons. Morgellons, by the way, is a confluence of smart dust and nanowalkers usually. Although if you get smart dust really bad, if you're really toxic because you're eating or consuming something with lots of it in there, say like makeup has lots of smart dust type particles in it, and you get exposed to, say, mercury, which makes you very acidic, like in a dental filling or like an old dental filling cracks, then, and this is what was happening in the early 2000s, is that people that were not targeted were having full-blown cases of Morgellons. And it was because the mercury was basically creating an internal environment that was putting them on ambient energy weapons systems radar. I know that's a lot. There's so much to all this stuff. But basically to say is that they ended up becoming there's so many metaphors I could use here. They ended up becoming a backstop for all these ambient weapon systems. Stuff that wasn't aimed at them was aimed at targets in their city or their county, but now that they were so acidic, they were resonating with it. And then they started growing these conditions that we refer to as Morgellons, but now more accurately, we can call nanomachinery, as Morgellons is just another form of nanomachinery. It's smart dust and nanowalkers, and that's what makes it different than what the majority of the public experiences with just the smart dust. The nanowalkers really add a big piece to this. That crawling sensation that people get are clumps of these nanowalkers moving around their skin. And by the way, nanowalker is not the term that I made for it. That's the term that the people that created it in 2004 made for it. And that 100% is being used heavily on just about every target. Some people don't get it as bad, so they don't get the itchy skin, just because the human traffickers in their area aren't using that weapon system, usually because they don't need to as much, because it's more labor intensive than the smart dust and the implants. Usually they use the nanowalkers more so on healthy people that have like a good habits of detoxing, eating right, working out, that type of thing. So in general, with that being said, in any given target, this is roughly how it is until you start working your way through the paradigm, is 70% of the nanotech in your body comes from smart dust or smart filaments and the growth of those, and 30%, give or take, comes from nanowalkers. And again, this changes on external and internal environmental factors. This is one of the big things that the human traffickers are facilitating in your area. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, they really have no idea what they're messing with. They're just following a book, right? They know that when they spray these nanowalkers in your area that they're crawling onto you, and they know that they make the directed energy weapons work, to some extent, but I highly doubt that they know that they're part of a greater weapon system that has to do with the chemtrails that they're also breathing. Now, obviously, all of that's changing right now. We're all going to learn about this together as a society, starting right about now, a few years ago, really, beginning of the shots and everything. But the goal of nanomachinery is to spread a conductive and polarizable material from the inside to the outside, and also the outside to the inside, to make these conductive pathways, right? If this nanomachinery, it is polarizable by light, by sound, and by all sorts of other frequency like radio, long and short wave, geez, you name it, right? That's why the nanomachinery it comes in so many different forms. Because ideally, when it's grown all through you and into you, it can have the capacity to be polarizable by any part of the electromagnetic spectrum that they want to aim at you, which is, again, everything from blue light and gamma rays to extremely low frequency. When your skin is covered in this stuff and it reaches all the way into your organs, they've got you in the new kill grid. And this is why ultimately they're not too worried, or new neo-feudalism, whatever you want to call it. This is ultimately why they're not too worried about people possessing guns, because they have a way of making directed energy weapons hyper effective. And all they have to do, more or less, and who's they, is, it's the FBI contractors, DHS contractors, militaries of the world, the corporations of the world, the people that run all that. All they really have to do, if you're marked by any one of the members of this club, is to hit you with the implants, and the implants set the whole thing off. Because the smart dust is already in you, the heavy metals is already in you. So you hit them with the implants, you trigger the implants start forming this stuff on the outside of your body more so, and then you get these polarizable pathways from the inside to the outside. And then if you're really targeted, like most of us here, or a lot of us here, they put those nanowalkers in your environment and they just coat your skin with this crap. And a lot of people have dandruff, or have had dandruff since they've been targeted. It's not dandruff. It's that bioplaque. When that bioplaque dries out, this is what it does. It looks like dandruff in your environment. When it dries out, it falls off, so forth, so forth. This is what the smart dust filament looks like when it grows in your body. For everyone that can't see this, what I'm showing right now is a little GIF by Clifford Carnicombe of Carnicombe Institute. I think it's .com. It's .com or .org. I always get that mixed up. But what we're seeing is all these little runners. It looks to be kind of like worms. And this is I think this is 4000x. And we're just seeing these things grow across the screen. That amount of growth in this picture is about an hour or something like that. So you're looking at like a centimeter of growth or less every few hours of these smart dust when it's in your body. The common pathways that these people the human traffickers are trying to facilitate are from the left lung to your bloodstream, and then once this nanotech is in your bloodstream, or heavy metals for that case, they pulse an area with a directed energy weapon, or they have an implant in that area already, and it gets pulled to that target area. So that's probably that's the short-term, most rapid and most common pathway in all targeted people. When that goes on for long enough, the end goal, or not the end goal, but the larger goal is to get your mouth to your anus covered in this bioplaque. And what that does is it creates all these spots where the particles that you're ingesting can go from your GI into your bloodstream, and then again to target area. And if you think about it, your GI, your gastrointestinal tract, is more or less the biggest opening on your body. The whole thing's a cavity, right? Especially every time you eat, that cavity gets larger. Again, from your colon to your mouth, it's an opening. So if they can get these nanowalkers and smart dust to proliferate and coat that area, then not only can they facilitate that leaky gastrointestinal that I was talking about, syndrome or symptom, they can also steal the nutrients from your intestines. Well, not they. The nanotech will steal the nutrients from your intestinal tract to build itself even quicker. And that's got to do with the food crypts in the upper intestine, to be particular, but that's a bit of there's more explanation to that we're not going to go over today. That's a conversation for another time. It's very, very worth having, though. In the colon, when there is this bioplaque that goes from the mouth to the anus, it causes constipation. And not only that, but there's so much magnetic charge to defecation. It's unbelievable, really, how much magnetic charge is in there. You could literally power a battery with excrement, and I think that's been done before. But either way, it makes you more acidic in general, again, causing that runaway effect. The colon is heavily targeted with nanowalkers and everyone that's got nanowalkers in their environment, which again is pretty much every targeted person, because they wish to slow down. Let's go back to the human traffickers. They want to slow down your defecation, put you in a state of constipation for all the reasons I've mentioned. How these pathways are established throughout your body, this nanotech, how it moves about your body and pioneers it, is, like I've been saying a few times now, it's mostly, if you just sum it down to this, low energy pulses. Sometimes those low energy pulses come from beam weapons, lasers and masers, and sometimes they come from implants. And when I say low energy, I don't really mean low energy. I mean relatively, compared to all the things that could be done in the whole world, low energy. But as far as when these things are interacting with your body, it's not that low of an energy. Also, there is an environmental magnetization aspect to this. There are cone weapons, dirty electricity, and longer wavelengths. And I put question marks around the frequencies they use in cone weapons, because who really knows? You know what I mean? I'm not doing this, but I do know that they will blanket an area specifically to target you with these ambient directed energy weapons. And then the longer wavelengths, I would say, are undirected energy weapons, and those are definitely a big part in all of this. They do pretty crazy different things, and it's a longer conversation itself. But that's to say that all of these things play a part in nanotech and its proliferation, specifically in targeted individuals or survivors, but also in the general public too. But like I said, when the general public doesn't have a lot of these ambient, undirected energy weapons in their environment, this nanotech just plaques in their veins, in their arteries, and their vessels. And it literally looks like calamari when it's plaqued there. I don't have a picture, but I very well could. I have covered it before, but we could cover it again. This is what the plaque looks like. I guess I do have a picture. I don't have a picture of it pulled out of a clot, but this is exactly what it looks like when it's pulled out of a clot. For everyone who can't see, can you mute yourself, whoever's unmuted right now? So I'll have to go back and I'll have to look, and then I'll have to unmute. I'll have to mute you. But either way, right there. Okay, that's what I'm going to have to do. Hold on a second, everybody. That's anonymous that's doing that. Excuse me for this. All right. Keeping going. Let's see. What we're seeing right now, for everyone who can't see, is it looks to be like, it's hard to describe, but it looks to be like it's very thin. It's wound around a piece of metal. It looks kind of like artificial skin almost. It's got the composition of a plastic or a rubber, but that's what the nanotech looks like. That was cultured in a Peachtree dish. This is the Peachtree dish that was cultured in. This was, again, Clifford Carnicombe's work. It took him a month to culture this. In your body, it grows much faster because of the directed energy weapons and all the other things I was talking about. The acidic qualities make it grow much faster. But it's pretty freaking disgusting. It kind of looks like lard. It looks like lard, but more structure. This is what, so that previous picture, if you zoomed in on it 3,000 times, this is what you would see For everyone who can't see, it looks to be like clear filaments, and the clear filaments have these little dots all around them. The little dots are the seed-like, or the things, the seed-like material contained within the smart dust, although these filaments are contained too. These filaments actually hold what's called the cross-domain bacteria within them. And the cross-domain bacteria is the seed that grows all these different forms. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the filaments growing out of the cross-domain bacteria and the cross-domain bacteria by itself. At 6,000x, we see how tightly wound all these different pieces are together. It's pretty freaky looking. It's hard to describe. I won't even bother. And then at 6250 zoom, we see the innermost aspect and the smallest component of nanotechnology, of smart dust in particular, smart filaments, whatever you want to call it. So again, the composition of nanotech is that it makes that bioplaque, right? And that bioplaque is what we saw. It was kind of like lard, but with more structure. It forms very thin construction in the outermost area of the cell within the, quote, bulk water, unquote. That's not my terminology. That's a biology terminology that's not widely spread. But the bulk water is the so-called wastewater of the cell, and it's outside of the cellular membrane. It's the farthest reaches of the cellular organism. And that bulk water has got the most toxins in it naturally. That's where your cells put the toxins. That's where the heavy metals are concentrated. That's where it's the most acidic. That's where the nanotech prefers to grow. And this is why fasting is so beneficial to you. It's because when you fast, your body actually gets rid of that wastewater around each of the cells individually. If anyone's ever fasted, you'll know that like on your second day or something like that, you'll just start peeing and peeing and peeing. And what that is you're getting all that wastewater from all the individual cells out of your body. Chelating is also, which is binding heavy metals and excreting them from your body, is also hyper effective for this reason, because you're getting that heavy metal particulate out of the bulk water, and the nanotech has got much less of a habitable environment for itself. An alkaline diet is pretty amazing too, because electrochemically the alkaline foods are finding these acidic conditions and mating with them, and then your body is excreting it. So that's why fasting, chelating, and alkaline diet are so beneficial, because of this, the formation of nanotech within the bulk water, wastewater, or acidic water, right? And that's pretty much the biggest reason. This is a longer conversation, but I'll say it very quickly. This is the biggest reason people get chronically inflamed, is they carry around wastewater too long in their body. Or too much of it for too long. That's usually what it is. That, again, that's a longer conversation. A lot of people could be very upset with me for saying that in the medical community, but there's a lot of proof of that claim. And the proof of it is just not talked about. It's not discussed, but it has to do with the cellular composition. So any given cell under different electrical conditions actually forms different functions and can be called a completely different thing. For example, there's been under microscope proof of this statement I'm about to say. A red blood cell in acidic conditions has become like a yeast cell. All right. Now that whole idea is pleomorphism, and it has been proven, although just like epigenetics or any big science that we all should know about, it's being actively suppressed from the public's knowledge, because it's huge. What I just said in another way is that the acidic or alkaline conditions of any given cell will determine its function within your body. All right, so that basically just blew up germ theory. All right, and like I said, there's lots of proof of this in this thing we call pleomorphism, which is literally where they can literally see these round red blood cells under a microscope change into yeast cells, which are supposed to be two completely separate things. And this goes to a greater point of why the food supply has been poisoned with heavy metals for so long. even before the smart dust and smart filaments were in the air. Because somebody figured this out a long time ago, that if they get a whole bunch of heavy metals in a person, that they can create these bioplaques, yeast. When I say bioplaque, another way of thinking about it is literally like the plaque that's on your teeth. It's just like that, but it's more pervasive because of this nanotech aspect. But even before the nanotech, bioplaque it's always been, not always, but since World War II, it's been engineered to be in the public's body more so that parasites and other secondary invaders can flourish. All right, and they did that with heavy metals. That's why heavy metals have always been in the food supply. Or, again, not always, but since like 1920 or something like that. So the conclusion of smart particle nanotech formations is they grow from the inside to the outside through GI and lung pioneering. That's gastrointestinal and your left lung primarily, but not just your left lung. If you, sometimes your right lung too. If anybody that's truly targeted goes to the doctor and you can find an honest doctor, like say one in Mexico or something like that, and they did a scan of your lung, which again, friends of mine in Mexico have done this, and not just that, but other countries, you'll find that your left lung has been heavily impacted with all of this heavy metal nanotech aerosols getting pulled through it, because it creates these like mini fissures, right, and gets into your bloodstream that way. The smart dust is guided by implants, weaponized frequencies, that's directed and ambient, heavy metal concentrations, synthetic heavy metal compounds, and chemical substrates. Synthetic heavy metal compounds and chemical substrates operate very, very similarly as heavy metal concentrations. So more or less they're doing the same thing in your body, which is holding that acidic charge. Okay, now to nanowalkers. They are very, very small electromagnetically responsive robots. And when I mean very small, they're 10 nanometers, which is unbelievably small, unconceivably small. We literally can't imagine how small that is. One drop of this, one drop of water containing these nanowalkers, so like the weapons that they would deploy in a break-in, would contain millions, potentially hundreds of millions of these things, right? I wouldn't know, but a very, very high amount. So when they're getting into your house during break-ins and they're spraying your bed or your clothes or your furniture or whatever, when you're not home, or sometimes when you're home, we're talking about millions and potentially even billions of these things in your environment. So many that it takes literally somewhere around a year for it to clear up from your environment. So if they broke in, sprayed all your stuff, and it was exposed, not just kept in a closet somewhere, but like clothes you wore or something like that, it would take about a year for those clothes to be clean, even with washing it in the wash of nanowalkers, give or take. I wouldn't know particularly, but in my personal experience, 10 months to 16 months. The purpose of the nanowalkers is to drop that payload, so to speak, of the nanomachinery to connect to the smart dust growth, the other nanomachinery that's already in your body, and connect your insides to your outsides to make you more accessible to directed energy weapons, or even just to go straight for the implants and clump around them. This is Robert McCreight, and this is from his article, The War Inside Your Mind. This is another Georgetown professor. I just posted a video of his on Rumble. From what I can tell, the research I did of him, he died last year, is that he was a decent guy, caught up in a bad system, and he learned about a lot of this stuff. And he was trying to I wouldn't say passively, but I wanted to, warn the other insiders of these weapon systems and how they're all coming together right now. In that video that I posted, he talked about how directed energy weapons, PSYOPs, and the nanoscale were all creating a new paradigm of weapons that were being utilized and would change everything forever. Now, targeted individuals are living that. He didn't really hammer home that part, not the targeted individuals are living it, but the confluence of them. He didn't hammer at that point home because that's the big secret. If people understood, if everyone understood that was targeted, that nanotech was a huge part of this, maybe the biggest part of this, bigger than directed energy weapons, then maybe then it would be over very quickly. All the targeting, the genocide that we're under, the deaths, just the endless millions and millions of people have died worldwide from this already. But either way, back to his article. This is where he talks. He discloses nanowalkers. I already knew that these existed before he disclosed this. I was looking for this proof. I was looking for someone like him to come out and say it. And I think he's the only one as of date to say basically what I'm about to say right now. And I'm just going to read his article. In 2012, this is me reading. In 2012, and he was wrong about that. It was 2004, so he was wrong about this line. But anyways, chemists at New York University created a nanoscale robot from DNA fragments walking on 2 legs just 10 nanometers long. This invention was termed a nanowalker. With the help of pissorolin molecules attached to the ends of its feet, it takes its first baby steps, 2 forward and 2 back. Its creators envision a future molecule scale production line. Excuse me, that's my dog if you can hear it. Its creators envision a future molecule scale production line where molecules are shifted until the right location is reached. In this unique way, a nanorobot injects chemistry like spot welding on a car assembly line. This is a fairly clear example of biomimetics, where with nanotechnology they can imitate some of the fundamental biological processes in nature, such as the behavior of DNA, to engineer new methods and perhaps even improve them. The nanowalker implies a high intensity level of serious research, which by itself seems benign, but when convergently mixed deliberately with other technologies such as nanotech, neurotech, biotech, and others, paints a different picture as one contemplates the distribution of dangerous weapon systems. And there you go, he says it again. That's the best you're ever going to get from these insiders, because he doesn't want him and his family to die in a break-in. That being said, I mean, that's what it is. But he goes out and he tells you about as clear as he can exactly what I've been saying. Okay, the pioneering of nanowalkers, how it works is they can be aerosolized, they can be put into chemical particulate and released in your breezeways and then get into your breathways. And it can, like I said, it can heavily plaque your lungs, specifically your left lung, and get into your body that way. Or, maybe that's all it's supposed to do. And then the smart dust, smart filament takes over from there. Whatever. It's, like I said, it's dependent on environment, how much these nanowalkers are relied upon. It's sprayed into your environment, like I've said a few times, and put on things that you're wearing, usually, or your bedding or your furniture. And it crawls from the outside to the inside through your openings, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your anus, fingernails, belly button. I think that's about it, but that can be a big deal. They can literally crawl from your mouth down into your stomach, where they can be triggered in mass in a second and make you vomit. And that's not all they can do. I'll cover that more in a second. The nanowalkers, they form the nanomachinery much quicker than the growth of smart dust, but they're much more fragile. So once they've formed, once basically they stop crawling and they've deposited their payloads of themselves, more or less, that's what the payload is, then it's a very fragile construction compared to the smart walkers. But it can still be effective if it's used acutely for a specific reason at specific times, which is exactly how it's used, or it's used to buttress the growth of the smart dust filaments from the inside out. Again, that goes to the goal of Nanowalker, which is to connect the nanomachinery from the outside of your body to the inside. Your body becomes more vulnerable to weaponized resonant frequencies, which makes you more electrifiable, right? It makes, that's not a real word. It makes you more polarizable. It makes you more polarized, I guess, would be the way to say it. It allows for a higher voltage of frequency to impact you. That's not the right way to say it. It allows for more energy to not be dissipated by your body, but to go into the internal organs to cause havoc. That is the best way to say it. Your brain, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your gallbladder, pick your thing, right? Whatever these people have aimed their weapon systems at, wherever your implants are. It makes the target area very magnetic, very quickly, for very short-term rapid effect. Okay, that's when nanowalkers distribute their payloads. With a combination of other directed energy weapons like lasers and masers, which are beam style, and scalar weapons, which are dielectric. That's a longer conversation about physics, but basically they can cause a rapid polarization of any given area. That's how these people are doing the sex attacks. That's how they're doing vertigo attacks, the constipation, diarrhea, vomiting, the very intense, sharp headaches that only last for a second. It's through these very, very small robots crawling into you and then being polarized all in a second. And once they're polarized for a few seconds, if they're not buttressing or connecting to other nanomachinery, they more or less burn out. They become ineffective very quickly. So solutions to all this, and this is the end, the smart particle growth, it's all about resolving that internal acidic condition. You can do that with alkaline diet, fasting, eating charcoal. That's something I've been doing recently. Very, very effective. And what's great about charcoal is that you can make it yourself with some wood. You just find some wood, some clean wood from anywhere, outside, whatever. Cut it up fine enough, put it in an oven, and turn it into charcoal. Or put it in a pan, turn it into charcoal, and eat that charcoal. And you'll be blown away with how effective that is. Diatomaceous earth is very effective. Castor oil, NAC, I forget what that stands for off the top of my head. It's very effective.
N-acetylcysteine.
Thank you. Yep, that's right. Cloves, cinnamon, garlic, onions, turmeric, coconut water, and just generally lots of raw veggies are also very effective. But that's only if you can get that stuff clean. A lot of it's got heavy metals in it. That's a longer conversation about how they're doing all that. But the charcoal is fantastic. Anybody can get it. You can do this pretty much in the next few hours, wherever you are. That's why it's so great. And it's very, very effective at detoxing the smart particle growth, the nano tech that's in your GI and around your GI. And that's primarily, after the left lung is pioneered, that's primarily where the nanotech and the nanomachinery is grown, especially because it wants to steal the bionutrients from your food. The solutions to the nanowalkers is a little bit more difficult because you're talking about, basically there's like two different states of it. One is when it's crawling on you, and the other one is when it's deposited its payload. When it's deposited its payload, it's much easier to handle because then you can treat it more or less like you would resolving acidic conditions. But if we're talking about like sex attacks or vertigo attacks or something like that, what I found works the best is pulsed electromagnetic fields. All right, there's a high voltage EMP build on Onionhead Andrew if you want to understand more of what I'm talking about. And then wearable electrical components. If you put enough electrical wearable components, those capacitor inductors, the braces I've been talking about quite a bit, if you put enough of those on you, then when these other weapon systems, the beam weapons particularly, go to polarize that material, it can't, and therefore the nanowalkers remain somewhat ineffective, if not all the way. Fasting is also very, very big with the nanowalkers. When you don't have that wastewater in your body around all your cells, the capacity for nanowalkers goes way, way down, as does all the nanomachinery, but particularly nanowalkers because their construction is so thin. And that's it for the conference or the class part of this.
Tweet, tweet, tweet. Tweet, 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 tweet. Ooh, 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 ooh.